Hey guys! I thought it would be fun to share with you today some of my favorite art supplies. I know as a painter I always love seeing into other artist studios and seeing what supplies they use, so here are some of my favorite ones that I use. I'm not super diverse in what I use. I generally use basically the same paints, the same brushes in all of my work, so here we go. I paint in acrylics, and so some of my favorite brands are these ones. So I use Galleria acrylics. They're Winsor & Newton's paints, and I really like them because they're pretty inexpensive, or they're basically middle of the range price for a pretty good quality and good color opacity. So I definitely buy my white in this in big bottles because I use a ton of white. And but they do come in smaller tubes like this, or even like little, I think they're like 2-ounce ones. So I really like these Winsor & Newton's paints. I also use Liquitex paint. So they come in these smaller tubes. I really like Liquitex because they are very heavy body, and I tend to paint much thicker strokes and want to have a lot of like body and opacity in my paints. So that's another brand that I really like. I have a couple colors, a magenta and a phthalo blue in the Liquitex. I also buy a golden acrylic. Not very many colors of mine are golden because they are so expensive, but it is really worth it for me to buy my yellow, just my regular like cadmium yellow medium in, oh I'm sorry, that's not even golden, that's Liquitex. I have bought it. I have bought golden paints in the cadmium yellow because they are so opaque. And yellow tends to be the most translucent, the most thin kind of a color, so I'll buy that in golden sometimes. I guess this one is Liquitex, so I bought it in Liquitex too. And then Grumbacher is another brand. I really like their phthalo green just because I've gotten used to it. It makes a little bit more of like a minty shade versus, I don't know, I've used Winsor & Newton's phthalo green and it just is a little different. I just tend to like Grumbacher's better for the green. And then I also will use Liquitex Basics basically for this color, which is their cadmium orange hue. For whatever reason, it is an unusual type of orange because when you mix it with white, it kind of gives you this corally pinky color, and I haven't really been able to find that in other oranges. I don't use many Liquitex Basics because they are pretty thin on the pigmentation of the paint, and so I prefer to have thicker paints where I can paint like one stroke and it'll cover over whatever color is underneath it and be really opaque. But these are good if you're just starting out. They do, I don't know, I get a little frustrated with them sometimes, like I'm not a big fan of their white, but I know a lot of other artists use them all the time. So the moral of the story is I think just try a bunch of brands to see what you really like and what you prefer. Because really what I've gathered over the years is just me trying and experimenting and figuring out what colors I like from what different brands. So the last color, or the last brand that I bought in the past is Nova Color. They come in these really big tubs, and this is actually the smallest of the tubs. Other ones are like pints or gallons. And I bought these in college. I haven't bought them again but once. I think I got them for when I was doing a personal piece that was really big, and you can just buy them in such bulk. They do have a more fluid consistency, but good pigmentation, and I love their phthalo blue. I actually am basically out of this one and I need to buy another one because it has this really rich deep dark quality that let's see, that Liquitex's phthalo blue doesn't really match, so I think I need to buy some more Nova Color. When I mix in a medium, I only use one, a Liquitex's Ultra Matte Gel. I basically just use a thickening medium to get really thick body to my strokes. So usually I'll paint my flowers kind of a little bit more flat, and then if I want more raised strokes, I'll mix in the matte gel at the very end for like some of my top strokes. and it will hold the body of the paint so that as all of the water dries out of the paint, it'll still keep that really nice thick raised texture to it, which I really love. So those are my paints. And again, I'll just say I really have just gathered things over the years through experimentation. There's really no wrong place to start, so just try buying a few brands and just investing a little bit here or there before you choose one brand and like buy all the colors in that one brand, just to kind of see what you like personally. When I store paint, I wanted to show you, I will keep extra paint in a Tupperware. So you can see I have a blob of paint here. What I do is I get a wet paper towel and I'll just get it kind of damp and squeeze out all like the drippy water. Lay it in the bottom here, you can see, and then I'll put a piece of just kitchen wax paper over top, and that kind of creates just a barrier so that the paint doesn't soak into the paper towel. And then I'll just put my blob of paint in there and then seal it up in the Tupperware, and it will keep for like a month or more. And generally I just do that with colors that I mix a lot of a color, particularly for like the background of my painting, and then I want to save that color till the very end of the painting and then paint the sides to match the background. So that's sort of my process and why I save it in like little Tupperwares. I haven't really gotten into the palettes, the entire palettes that can save your whole page of paint, and you just put on the lid and come back for another painting session. I own one, but I've never gone through like the hassle of setting it up and like getting the sponge all wet, so I still need to try that. The palette I use is palette paper actually, so you can see it's just like a pad of paper like this, and this is all dry so I can close it and show you. It's just Blick brand. I think Michael's craft store has a brand that you can buy their store brand, but I love these because when you're done you can just take the page, so just pages of wax paper basically, but higher quality than kitchen wax paper. It doesn't really like wrinkle or ruffle when it gets wet, and then you just rip off the page and then you have all of the new paper ready. So I love that. It's super easy for cleanup. I generally put out very small amounts of paint on my palette and then just keep putting out a little bit as I use it up so it doesn't dry out. And this kind of paper works really well for that. I don't tend to need to save my whole palette for another painting session. Otherwise I probably would use one of those Tupperware like palettes that'll keep it wet. So yeah, so that's my palette and my paints and my medium. And when I varnish at the end, I'll use Liquitex's Soluvar Matte Varnish. So you can see it has like the orange band on it. It's a little bit different than just their regular matte varnish. I don't exactly know how it's different. I think it might have more like light protective properties or something like that, but I've had a really good experience using this, so I just keep buying it again. It doesn't smell, I mean it does have an odor, so I let it air out generally outside before I bring my painting back inside, but it doesn't hang on, the bad odor doesn't hang on as long as some cheaper brands have for me in the past, like Krylon, which is like only like $3 or so. This is more like $12, which is, oh no, not 12, I think it's more like closer to 20. But anyway, I really like it, and I just generally go for a matte spray varnish, so really after it dries you can't even tell it's there. I like that matte quality on my paintings. Some artists really like gloss, so then they'll spray gloss or brush gloss, but I just go for the quick spray. For brushes, I have a couple different brands, and same thing with as with my paints. I really have just collected brushes over the years, and I just kind of use what I have on hand. For my paintings, I use mostly for all of like the motif parts of my paintings, I use round brushes. Basically for the backgrounds, if I'm just painting a large area, I'll use flat brushes. So you can see like this is kind of a small flat. I have a little bit of a bigger flat, but I can't see it right now. I don't know where it went. It's just like a slightly thicker than this one. But I'll use round brushes because they just suit my painting style for the shapes of my flowers and my leaves. So I have a bunch of different sizes of them. based on the size of canvas I'm using. So if I'm using like a small, like little mini ones, like 5x5 canvases, or even up to like 8x8s or 8x10s that are like this size, I use this round brush that's like a size 8. It's a Simply Simmons brand, and I really like them. They do not lose bristles at all. They're really good quality, even though they're just sort of the academic level brush. They're not very expensive. And I use these for all my painting workshops. I love these ones. For my larger paintings, I'll use, this is an American Painter, and it's okay. It's a little bit short, the bristles, so you can see they don't like bend quite as much. There's not as much of them versus this one where it has a lot more of a bend to it. I generally like more bend because I tend to do like kind of single stroke strokes for my flowers and my leaves, so I want to like have more movement in the bristles of my brush, if that makes sense. So I use this one sometimes. I'm not a huge fan of it. And then this is Royal's Zen line of brushes. I bought this one. This is a number 12. I really like this one because it's so large. So on a very large canvas, I can recreate the same type of single stroke looks that I get on my smaller paintings. So I really love this Zen brush for that. And then I was just looking recently, I haven't bought any of these, but the Simply Simmons brand has a XL line of brushes, so they're all really large, and they have a large round brush that seems to be bigger than this one, so I'm thinking of buying that. I also use a palette knife for sometimes when I'm mixing larger amounts of paint on my palette. I don't really use a palette knife on my canvas at all. That just isn't a style that I've explored yet. But I love palette knives for mixing larger amounts of paint because they can do a much more even mixing job. They're not absorbing any of the pigments. What I found in the past is if I'm mixing with a brush a large amount of paint, I'll add like a new color to the mixture, and then most of it will get kind of embedded in my brush and will keep coming out as I mix and not really helping it to evenly mix. So a palette knife is really great for that. I love my palette knife. So those are my tools and my paints. I was gonna also tell you about my canvases and my paper that I use. So the canvases that I use are gallery wrap. So you can see they have a thick, like 1.5 inch edge, and they are heavy duty. So they have really thick, pretty sturdy stretcher bars that they're on. I prefer to use the gallery wrap kind because I sell all my paintings with a solid painted side that kind of complements the picture, and then my clients can just hang it on the wall and not worry about framing unless they want to. They definitely have that option if they want to, but I'll just add a wire straight onto the stretcher bars, and then they'll have it straight to hang. So I like this brand. This is Michael's Arts Craft Store brand. It's their level 3 gallery wrapped canvas, and I've had great success with them. I just have to test out the larger canvases if I'm buying them in person, which mostly I do at my local store. I just have to test out by laying them flat on the ground whether the frame is warped. I have accidentally bought some warped frames and had to restretch a canvas or take them back. So you just want to like lay it flat and press on the different corners, and if it rocks at all, don't buy that one, just try to find a different one. But other than that, every once in a while them having that problem, I really like that brand. And I also buy Dick Blick's Premier, I think it's their Premier line, and it's the gallery wrap, same thing, 1.5 inch edge. So I really like how sturdy they are, and their canvas quality seems like kind of mid-weight, so I like that it's not thin or cheapy feeling. So that is my canvases, and I buy them in all a bunch of different sizes, minis, big, all around. When I'm doing paintings on paper, generally for my patterns or in some of the demos that I've been doing in my videos, I love painting on Canson's Bristol paper. So it's their XL large line, so I buy like the larger pads. This one is 11 by 14 inches. I'll even buy a larger pad too for more room to explore. But I really like these because their Bristol is a good heavy weight, so it's 96 pounds. And this is my Dahlia painting that I did in my last video, and it has a nice like heavy stiff quality to it, so that the page doesn't really ruffle all that much after it's dried or while you're painting, so it holds that flat quality while I'm painting my thicker paints on it. And it also just holds up well for like storage. It doesn't like bend or fold all that easily. So I really like that Bristol paper for my paintings on paper, and then will generally scan them into the computer if I'm going to use those painted elements. I don't really sell paintings on paper, but you definitely could. It's high quality enough that the paper would hold up well for just selling an individual painting or an original painting. Let's see, I think that covers all of the art materials. The last thing I just wanted to show, in case you guys were interested, this is more on the businessy side a little bit, is just my business cards and postcards. I've gotten my business cards from moo.com, M-O-O.com. I really like them. They're really nice quality. I get kind of the mid-range quality, so not the cheapest, but not the most expensive like linen ones. And I really like their print quality. They're like, have really nice thick paper, and they let you put a bunch of different images on your cards. So I'll show you. You can kind of see like I have a couple different flower types that you can see. I'll cycle through. I think I had 4 or 5 designs, and they let you put an individual design on every single card, up to like 100 images, so you can kind of display your portfolio or whatnot on them. And I feel really good giving them out because they're just really, really good quality, and they have a little bit of a heavier texture, so they feel really nice. I think I get like the matte smooth texture. I forget exactly what it's called, but I would really recommend moo.com. And then for my postcards, I've gotten from Vistaprint. Moo is definitely a lot more expensive for postcards, and generally I feel like people might be more likely to hold on to a business card because it's small, but postcards might be a little bit more disposable because they're larger and maybe harder to like store somewhere. And so I don't spend quite as much on them, but I really was happy with Vistaprint's quality of printing for my postcards. So I got like gloss on one side and matte on the other, and I have some of my artist information and then an image on the other side. So yeah, I was happy with them, and I just bought a whole bunch of them for the last holiday fair that I did, and then I just include them in my orders whenever, with the leftover postcards that I have. Whenever somebody orders something, I'll just put it in, and it's like a nice pretty little addition instead of putting in a business card. The last thing that I wanted to show you guys is my easel that I paint on. So this is my easel. I know it's not super easy to see, but it's Winsor & Newton's aluminum travel easel, so like for plein air painting and stuff. So it just basically it's like 3 telescoping legs and a little removable shelf, and it can go pretty compact when you're packing it up or having to like travel with it or whatnot. But I really like it because I have a super small studio, so I'm always like moving and maneuvering and having to like reevaluate my space depending on like what's getting stored in here at the time. And I like this one because it can be pretty compact with the legs, so I can like move the legs closer together or bring like the third leg up a little closer if I have like more stuff stored in my studio, or if I have more room to spread out, I can like adjust the legs based on that. I would love someday to have a like beautiful wood H-frame like stable easel if I have a bigger studio someday, but this is really great. I really like this one. I know it's a little hard to see, but this is the shelf, and I've painted small paintings on it. If I paint like 8 by 8 or smaller, I generally just paint flat on my my drafting table here, but if I'm painting like mid-size or large paintings, I'll use this. And the biggest painting I've done is a 4 by 4 foot painting on this, so it can accommodate that large. and I definitely had to like wedge it into the corner of my studio to get that big of a painting in here. But yeah, I really enjoy this one, and I feel like it's really good value for how inexpensive it was. It is, I can't remember how much I paid for it. It was not even $50. It was lower than that, and I got it on eBay, like kind of gently used. So it's, I would say it's a really good one for if you have a small space, or any sort of like very simple collapsible travel easel is good if you have a small space. Yeah, so I'll put that back there. So those are all the art supplies I had planned to share with you. I hope that was helpful, and if you're an artist and you're interested in trying something new or just seeing what I use, I hope that was interesting and fun for you. So shoot me an email or reply in the comments on the video if you have any questions or follow-up things about the art supplies that I use. And thanks so much for watching.